So we're going to just dive right in because we only have 50 minutes together, and I want to be able to answer as many questions as possible. And Rob's going to be helping me monitor the chat box, and we'll continue from there. So how does your budget start? Your budget starts by forming a budget committee of about 3 to 5 members. Hopefully you'll choose, or the executive committee will select members for you that are familiar with the operations of your unit and have an interest in the financial part of your unit. The first step, of course, is to review your prior year's actual and your budgeted receipts and disbursements, so you get an idea of where you were, so you know where you can go. So that's your first step. Once your committee starts to meet, that's your number one thing to review, is how you finished last year, okay? And then you start to think about this year. And the most important part of doing PTA budgeting, of course, is we always start with what we want to do. So we want to determine how much money our unit will need to cover whatever our anticipated expenses are for the upcoming year. We want to know, what do we need to put aside for the various programs that our chair people are planning, what supplies that they need to carry out their plans of work, what other expenses that we might incur as far as hospitality at our meetings and other things that we do, and other meeting costs. I also want to encourage everybody, and I will do this probably throughout the presentation, I am a big believer in training. Training is offered both locally through your region and at the state, and I think it's very important, part of your bylaws. Charge as a unit is to make sure that you are doing leadership development and training of your members and officers. So I want to make sure that everybody is including lines like that on their budget, so that is could be considered an anticipated expense. So if you don't have those already on your budget to plan for this year, so if you didn't do that last year, you really might want to inquire with the president, maybe some of the training that you want or they want to take advantage of this year. And the same with supporting region events. Most of the regions hold, in addition to trainings, they hold networking dinners and programs, as well as their spring conference, which you are a voting member of and should be represented at. And sometimes there's a small fee to attend those. So those are the expenses. So you really want to make that list as best you can, and of everything that you think you're going to need. And then once you realize how much your expenses will total, that is when you decide how you're going to pay for them. And that's when you set up what types of fundraisers or other ways of securing funds. Some people secure funds through membership, others do it through grants and partnerships, some accept donations. So whatever methods your unit uses, that you should make sure that your income is not going greatly over what you need for programs and supplies. As you know, most of the time in our budgeting, we do want to budget neutral. In other words, our expenses equal our income. And once you have all that, you want to draft your preliminary budget worksheet based on all of these projections so that you can see how everything adds up or doesn't add up and make any adjustments as needed. So in other words, if your chair people are asking for more funds than you feel that you can raise through your various methods, then you need to go back and let the board of directors know that some adjustments may be needed. Once you have your draft budget set up, and just a word on how you actually draft your budget, it is entirely up to you. It is up to what your unit feels comfortable with. If you feel that you need to, employ a computer program like QuickBooks, and that works for your unit, that's fine. I'm from Western Region. I'm just the former region director there, and I have units using everything, or had units using everything from QuickBooks to Excel to pencil and paper. All of those are acceptable for you as the treasurer, but it certainly is something that you should let your, as you are part of the executive committee, know how you intend to keep your records. And if QuickBooks is something that you feel you would like to use, that is a legitimate PTA expense, or another type of computer program like that, and that should be budgeted for, and you should be able to purchase that and use it on behalf of the association. So once the board of directors has a chance to see the budget and work on any recommended changes, since they are the ones that are putting in a lot of the requests for the various funds that are going to be used, the budget should be finalized, and that final budget is presented to your general membership. And that should happen at ideally either the first meeting of the upcoming year, or some units are choosing to do it at the final meeting of the previous year. And that allows the budget to be in place already July 1st. So when you present the budget, it should be presented line by line. And sometimes that can be long and drawn out, but the best thing that you can do is make sure that there are plenty of copies available, either electronically for people or in paper, and maybe save questions till the end and work your way through each of the lines so that everybody can see. It's very important. Transparency is very important for our association. I will say that we really believe that the more transparent we are with our members, the more people will see that we are an association that is worth being a part of, and will, you know, become a member and want to be more active because we are being transparent. So a little bit about when you actually do your budget. As I mentioned, our fiscal year starts July 1st. And so you can create your budget for that September time period. But if that's your tradition in your unit, and that's totally acceptable, what should happen at the close of the prior year is the executive committee or the board should ask for a spending plan for the months to cover July and August before your budget is approved, and part of September. So you as a treasurer could help identify some of those expenses that are going to be needed over the summer. Perhaps you want to purchase some meeting supplies ahead of time, or you have a back to school event and you need to fund any of those, then you need to have that approved spending plan in place. So at the end of the year, your unit should either approve a spending plan or the budget for the upcoming year. Now, in order to adopt the budget or approve, a majority vote of those present is required, but the most important thing is a quorum should be established first. Everybody should have the quorum listed in their bylaws as to the number of members who need to be present at a meeting. That's not the amount of votes you need. It just means that many people need to be present. And once you have that many people present that are members, then you can go ahead and vote. And then from those members, the majority has to adopt the budget. So the adoption of the budget then gives the full authorization for the PTA to spend the unit funds for any expenses that are listed in that budget. And if there are expenses that are going to be needed that aren't in the budget, then an amendment would have to take place. So it's best to get that budget as inclusive as possible, so to eliminate the need for amendments as you go forward. But amendments are certainly acceptable at any time. One thing that we like to note about membership dues income, so each unit has the option to set their amount of dues to the amount that their community and their PTA will support. The minimum is $4, and as you know, $4 is the portion of dues that a person joins the state and national. And the state PTA collects those dues both on behalf of the state and the national. So we have a little example here to show if you have 10 members who each pay $10 dues, you would have $100. On your particular part of your budget, your income, you would only show for the $6, which is the 10 minus the 4, the $6. You would show $60 as your income. Then we would have a bottom of below the line, it's called below the line entry. So once you get to your bottom line, below the line, you would just want to give an accounting to your members to let them know where the other $4 went. And so again, $4 times 10 members, the $40, you would indicate that that is money either paid to New York State or owed, depending upon what your status is. If you've paid for them through Member Hub, then you can record them as paid. If you haven't sent your transaction yet to New York State, you would just mark them as owed to New York State. So that's a little bit about the dues. So what we have here is you definitely need to show that as income, and at the bottom we say no expense entry. So there is no expense to actually the purchase of and people purchasing their membership, but you can have a membership expense line. I want to be clear about that. Some membership committees do, like set up a table at back to school night, or they do other types of activities, and they might need supplies to, decorate a bulletin board or make copies or that type of thing. So it's okay for your membership committee to have expenses. You just can't have a membership dues expense line. So talking about amendments, if you, again, you have to make a change to a budget, which is a living document. So everything is always taken into consideration. And so that's why we want to be, have the treasurer be monitoring the budget at all times. And I think it's important that the treasurer, I always want to say that you're not operating alone. You are part of the executive committee, and you should be always in constant contact with the executive committee. You are going to be almost like in the role of parent, where people are always constantly coming and asking you for things. And after a while, you're saying no a lot. Probably no more often than yes. People, well, do you have money for this? And do you have money to build us a playground? And do you have money to buy all new library books? And we're, almost kind of in that role. It can get a little bit overwhelming at times. So please stay in touch with your executive committee and let them know the kind of things that members and community members are coming up and asking about. So let's, have everybody share in the knows, so to speak. So anyway, if your budget needs to be amended, and there could be a lot of good reasons for amendments, maybe you had planned a fundraiser and it was more successful than you thought, so you have extra money and you want to add some expenses, or you had an expense line that didn't quite cover everything that you needed because you had instead of having a regular training for 100 people, all of a sudden 600 people signed up, like we're experiencing here in New York State. You might need to amend some of your expenses there. So that can be done anytime at a general meeting, at a meeting with a vote by your general membership. But it's really important that if you're presenting the membership with an amendment at a meeting, at that point, once you establish the quorum, as we talked about earlier, you actually need a 2/3 vote of approval to make that amendment. If you can, give prior notice. So in other words, if you know 30 days in advance that you have that extra those extra funds and you want to match some expenses to it, if you let people know, hey, at our upcoming meeting, we're going to be amending our budget, that's considered prior notice. And at that point, then you would just need a majority vote. Okay, so again, if you weren't able to let people know ahead of time, it's going to be a 2/3 vote of all the members that are present at the meeting. But if you are able to give prior notice, you are able to do that in just a majority. So reporting about the budget is one of the most important parts of being the treasurer, because again, it harkens back to our transparency. We want everyone to be able to know that we know where the money is. It's the most important thing is we know where the money is and we're not afraid to tell you where it is. So that's what our reports are about. So you should be presenting an update at every meeting. And if you can't attend, it should be submitted to the president to report on your behalf. And by every meeting, so some of us don't have general membership meetings every month, but you might have an executive meeting or a board meeting. That's when the update should happen. So really the treasurer is completing a report every month, and it is presented to one form of your hierarchy or another. For consistency's sake, because you have a bank statement, it is best that your month to month is based on your bank statement and not the calendar month or meeting to meeting. Obviously the calendar, sometimes it has 30 days, sometimes it has 31, which is not a big deal. And meeting to meeting, obviously your meeting dates can change. So there's some variables there, but if your bank statement goes from one date to one date, I think that's the best way to use it. It will help with your reconciliations. You should always have all of your records with you at meetings that you go to, either electronically on your laptop or on a flash drive that you could share on somebody else's laptop, or your pencil and paper, file folders, whatever you have available should be with you. So if you have a question from somebody, you can look it up, or if you need to share something and somebody wants to see something in black and white, one of your members, you're able to show it to them at that point. Your report will be part of the unit's minutes for that meeting, so that's part of the permanent records of the association. So those will be filed and saved in perpetuity for your unit. So on our next page, we do have a sample monthly treasurer's report, and this document is part of our resource guide. It was created there, so you can always access the New York State PTA web resource guide on our website. It's under the Leaders tab, and so that gives you an idea of how you might want to set up your own personal units report. And really, this kind of has everything on it that we need. It has what our planned budget was, our actual year to date, how we're doing so for the whole year, and then what we've done in the past month. And so that gives everybody a great bird's eye view of exactly where all the money is. And you can see on here, I'll just move the cursor down here. This is the below the bottom line entry that I was talking about how you can show your state and national part of your dues. Okay. So monthly reconciliations are a very important part of the treasurer's duties, and that is and your duty simply there is to find people to accomplish the reconciliation and to provide them with the right tools that they need to complete the reconciliation. The monthly reconciliation obviously is something that we've recommended for treasurers since, you know, the beginning of us as an association and having treasurer reports and treasury records. But in recent years, with our new switch to the AIM insurance company, it's actually become part of our contract with the insurance company. So the insurance company will cover us, and we do pay for that coverage, in case of a loss of funds through theft or embezzlement. But one of the things that they're going to ask of you if you find yourself in that situation is they want to see the monthly reconciliations. They want to see that you were being good stewards of your money, that you were taking care of it, and that this situation that happened was beyond your control. Having the monthly reconciliation says we're in control. So they're going to want to see that. So that's one more reason to do your reconciliation. So the reconciliation, again, is basically just a review of the last month's bank statement, a review of the receipts and the cash on hand and disbursements, and the people that are doing the reconciliation should be able to see clearly, and it would make sense to them. Okay, well, we had a, family program, and it was $5 to attend the program. So we should be seeing the receipts for that. And then the disbursements related to that. We, served refreshments at the family program, so we had to have an expense for that. Altogether, this is known as your ledger, and that really is your running history of your income and expenses. Calculating your receipts, your cash on hand, and your disbursements, and then comparing that to your bank statement is really what the reconciliation is about. Here's what we think we have, here's what we actually have, do they match? If we find that there are issues where they're not matching, that's very important that after the reconciliation is completed, that any issues, both small discrepancies or large discrepancies, or just mistakes in bookkeeping, should be reported to the membership, and so the membership is confident that those will be corrected going forward or adjusted as needed. So again, the monthly reconciliation should be completed every month. So again, even if it's not a general membership meeting, it can be done at the board meeting, it can be done by the executive committee. It could be done at an event. So in other words, if it's family program night and we're having a speaker in and we're not having a meeting that month, you can ask a couple of people to come a little early that are members, that are familiar with the budget, and have them come a little early or stay a little late and go over the reconciliation for you. So again, the reconciliation, if everything's in order, should not be more than a 15-minute process. Unless it's a heavy month for you with a lot of income and outcome, and that's usually in the early part of the year if you're doing membership and you're doing, school supplies and all different things. So, but then again, it should be completed every month, not by somebody who's already an authorized signature on your account or anybody related to them. Obviously, again, transparency. We would prefer it to be 2 people, also not related to each other, and also over the age of 18. Again, we're encouraging the statement month, and then in the meeting minutes, it should be part of your treasurer's report to say thank you to Mary and John for reconciling the bank statement this month. They have signed off, and everything is in order. So that should be part of the minutes. Now, if you don't have a meeting, you should report that at the next meeting to say, thank you to Sally and John who did March, and then thanks to Rob and Sonia who are here in the room with me, Rob and Sonia for doing it in April. And so those get onto the permanent records. And then the treasurer's report, or the reconciliation, should again be saved by the secretary, and then a copy in your records as well. And on the next couple of pages, we have a sample of the reconciliation form, which will be on your right. And then what's on your left are just pullouts from the form. Whoops, I made it move. Okay, so this again is a great form. Make 12 copies, make 15 copies in case somebody makes a boo-boo, and have them in your file and just hand them out when it's time. And again, it starts with the bank statement, and then any checks that are outstanding. And again, you would have your checkbook register for the reconcilers to see, and so they can check the list to see which checks should be there. And then again, your bank balance, your current bank balance on the new statement will help you with that part of, okay, how much money do we have in the bank? Whoops, I went too far. Okay, I'm sorry. You know what? I'm going to jump back. That was the middle section. I should have started with the top, which is your ledger balance. And you can do them either way, the bank statement or the ledger balance, but I apologize. The ledger balance is, again, what you have in your records, and then you would indicate, you know, what it was, where you ended last month, any receipts for the month that we're reconciling, any cash you might have on hand, which would be, you know, if there was an event earlier in the day and you were given the cash to deposit in the night deposit on your way home from the meeting, then you would have that indicated there. And then any disbursements or expenses that were made in the last month, and that should be your new balance in your ledger. And so that new balance, let me go slower to the second page, you should compare that with your bank balance. Hopefully those match. If they don't, we could either go back and try to reconcile that. And if it can't be reconciled, when we get to the statement here at the bottom, we would just mention that it's not complete or it's incorrect, and there's an indication here. The committee can fill out, the reconcilers can fill out and say we couldn't make it reconcile, in which case the treasurer needs to go back and figure out what the issue is that it's not reconciling and come back and have them reconciled again. That doesn't happen very often. I mean, it is pretty, it's pretty straightforward. Your money is either in the bank, and you should have a clear record of it. So for the most part, reconciliation is a good exercise to do. But it's, again, if it does create or find discrepancies, that is something that the treasurer really needs to respond to. So again, that there's a comfort level of the membership and especially the executive committee to say that we know where everything is. Maybe like a ledger entry was missed and you've corrected that and entered it so that it made the reconciliation come out even. The other part of the treasurer's work that happens at the end of the year that also has been a part of your bylaws for many, many years, but also has now become a requirement of the insurance company, again, to maintain your coverage in case of loss from theft or embezzlement, that they're going to ask to see your audit report as well. So the bylaws will define who should be on your audit committee. We'd like it to be about 3 people. It could be more. It should consist of 3 people who are not part of the account. They're not signers, check signers. They're not authorized. Again, not related to any of the check signers. Again, transparency. And obviously you as treasurer should not be on the committee that audits your own books. But it doesn't mean that the treasurer cannot be nearby or available by phone or text or email while the committee is meeting to answer any questions that might come up. Now, we recommend doing this, and it's manageable for volunteers to do this, your volunteer members to be assigned to the audit committee. But you do have the option if you're maybe a larger unit and your income and expenses are a larger amount, or have some complications that you feel an audit committee of volunteers, it's overwhelming to ask them. You're well within your rights as a unit to contract with a professional to have that audit done. That's a legitimate PTA expense. But again, it has to be approved by the membership. So that should be either a line item or an amended line item if you decide to have them audited at a cost by a professional. Regardless of who does the audit, there should be a written documentation at the end about the audit, and it's similar to the monthly reconciliation, only it's a compilation of the entire year with a recommendation. And so here's a sample. Oops, we'll get to the sample review form. So just really quickly, it is a review of the year. It's really a verification of all of the balances in your account and what bills have been paid. Again, so we can all clearly say to our members, we took care of the money. We know where the money is. We know how much we got. We know how much we spent. And we're very happy to say that we know exactly how much we have left. This is really to give assurance, as I said, and it is an end of the year process for all PTA units. When you're finishing your term as a treasurer, ideally we'd like to get this done as quickly as possible so that the new treasurer can take on what we would term a clean set of books. So you can do two things. You could call it a financial review, or you can call it an audit. They're kind of interchangeable at this point, but both this form and then the form I will show you on the next page, which is an audit report, are both available in the resource guide for you to use as a template. They're not like PDF fillable or downloadable as an actual document. This is just an example, so you would have to create it yourself. But once you do, you have to use it for the future, and you can tailor it any way you want for your unit. There are some templates on the national PTA, and we'll get to that a little bit later, that you might be able to take advantage of. What I will say about the sample audit report, because sometimes when you say audit, it is a little bit daunting for some units, and some of them feel, well, it's summer and PTA is done and we don't really need to take care of that. Again, it is critical that this audit gets done. I personally have, in my units as a region director, have experienced it not once but twice, where we have units that have had a loss of funds, and I will tell you that both times, the report back from the officers and the members were that was the last person that we would ever expect that would do this. So I know we want to be, trusting of everybody, and I think that's a great thing, but at the same time, for all of our members, the best thing we can do is to be transparent and to complete these documents. So what's great about this audit report is when you go to the resource guide and review this, you'll see these blue numbers that are after each one of these things. The resource guide gives you more clear instructions on how to fill out each line. So it's a step-by-step, and you can give this right to the audit committee for them to use in their work. So I mentioned a little bit before about national PTA. So I highly recommend that everybody, no matter who you are, what level of leadership you are in a PTA, that you sign up for the local leader kit on the national PTA website. There is a section on finances there, which is great. And the finance section has both links to e-learning courses that you can take to learn more about your role as treasurer. And again, every unit has different levels of activities and events that they're doing, and some of the other e-learning courses that are more specific might appeal to what you're doing. And then again, there's lots of templates for financial documents, not just things like the audit, but there's sample documents that you can use as the recording of money that's collected at events, for admissions, and how the person is going to submit it to you. They'll complete a form that you can both count the money together and sign the form together. So you have a document to put in your files. It also has examples of expense vouchers or expense disbursement forms where people who want to get reimbursed for expenses that they might have undertaken on behalf of the association can complete. So I highly recommend using those resources there. And then I'm just going to touch on a couple of things that I think are like common questions that we have as that I receive as treasurer, and then at the unit level, again, tends to be one of those things that we think, oh, well, we can go ahead and do that. We are an independent, PTA unit, even though we are under the umbrella of the New York State PTA. We are kind of given the independent status for the association to do our work. setting up our calendar, having our bylaws, and our budget and our program, everything that we do, it's really contained with what's approved by our members. As you all know, you've probably heard that statement many, many times. There's no PTA police, in the sense that we're not going to come and say, let's see all your paperwork and we want to make sure it's in order, because we are trusting you to take care of the things that you need to take care of. So I find that this is one of the most common questions, and that really is when we have a student in our community or a family that is suffering or has suffered a significant loss, maybe usually through a fire or flooding, that type of thing, or we have a student that may have an illness, or a family member that's ill, that it has changed their quality of life. And often people will come and say, well, we should be able to help them. The PTA, we should be able to, contribute to help a family that might need assistance. That is really a wonderful thing to do as a PTA, but it is important for us to understand that we are a 501c3 organization, and the 501c3 is a designation from the IRS, which gives us tax exempt status. And because of that, we are bound by certain guidelines. And so number one is, we talked about this from the very beginning, funds that we use have to further the mission and purpose of PTA. So our purpose is for every child and not for just an individual child. So it's very important. And I know it can sound cold and cruel, and because I have lived through that as well. But we like to advocate for other ways. And so we will get to that at the end. So again, we want to make sure that we are, for all of our members, making sure that our funds are being expended towards work of our mission. So again, we're really not for general welfare or disaster relief. That is not what our mission is. We are an education-based organization and an advocacy-based organization. There will be times, and we look to national for this, and you'll be notified of this, if certain disasters that have happened in recent times, national has given us guidelines of how we can assist other areas of the country that are experiencing things. Most recently, obviously with the devastating things that have been happening in Puerto Rico, they did come up with a plan for us to help with disaster relief. But in general, if it's a localized thing, it is not something that we can support through funds that were raised for PTA. Again, so if we had a fundraiser and we said the PTA is raising money for the PTA, we have to use that PTA money for PTA mission focused things. So we do, if we have individual beneficiaries, they must be eligible members of a charitable class. That's, again, IRS language. And that class must be large enough that the potential beneficiaries can't be individually identified. So I think this covers when we want to maybe support sometimes a small group in school. You may be asked to support the tech club. The tech club is getting started and they want to do some kind of drive to raise money for supplies, or they need money for supplies. You can, again, with approval of your membership, help out a group like that. Again, as long as the group is sufficiently indefinite that the community as a whole, rather than a pre-selected group of people, benefits when the charity provides assistance. So again, we can support the community, but it's not going to be, we're just going to help this family that has an issue, or the families that lived here that all suffered a flood, or that type of thing. So we really have to be mindful of that. And I know it's hard to say no to those types of things. But what we can do, and what we encourage all of us to do, is our PTA can certainly use our skills outside of PTA that we have learned from in advocacy and fundraising to help these groups or individuals. We can also use our resources as PTA to share the word. So in other words, if there is, and this is, again, I'm going to reach back to a situation that happened in my PTA life. There was going to be a fun run to raise funds to help a young man who was suffering a a devastating illness. And so it was very fine for the PTA to support this by spreading the word to all their members, like, hey, this fun run is happening. We hope you get out and support the student. The PTA could participate by being, volunteers at the event, but it's just not something that we can just blanketly say, we're going to send, $1,000 from our budget, from what's in our bank account to support this cause. It's just that really would be a red flag for the IRS. Sunshine funds and rainy day funds, everybody, we used to have those, and we've learned through the years through the IRS that those aren't appropriate funds for the PTA. Again, it kind of puts us into the benefiting us one student or family, a sunshine fund that, if, to send flowers if somebody was ill, or to recognize an achievement, maybe, singling out a staff member who may have done something special to, share a gift. That's not something that we can do through PTA. Again, that is something that we can, the PTA can offer to be one of the people that collects the funds that supports the sunshine effort or a rainy day effort if there's, less than a great reason that somebody is wanted to share something with someone in case of a funeral or that type of thing. So that money can be collected, but it doesn't go through the PTA money. It's collected by somebody trusted in the PTA. You can say at the meeting, oh, we're going to collect right now. If anybody wants to contribute at the end of the meeting, I have an envelope here on the table. Anybody can put money in there, and we will make sure it gets to the right place and it is used as intended for either a sunshine or rainy day fund type activity. Again, it should not be included in any of your PTA reports. There's no reason to have procedures about them because it should be separate, very clearly defined as not a PTA initiative. Over the years, this is, of course, been a growing part of PTA, and that is having the school wanting to do something for your school in the form of buying something that will live at the school, some kind of extra equipment or extra library books, anything that you would want to gift to the school. It's very important that those gifts don't go directly to the school. In other words, the PTA doesn't go out and purchase those things and then give them to the actual school. Because they are going to be part of the school's assets, so to speak, and those belong to the community. It's important that the PTA does that type of gifting through either a grant program or calling it a gift program. And so that money is, once your membership approves it and evaluates the idea of, is this something the PTA should be doing, then the money should be given directly to the school district through the Board of Education as granted funds. You can restrict the funds to say, we'd like to grant the funds to, X school district for the purchase of library books at my school. And then in that case, the board in accepting that is also accepting your terms that they would only allow that money to be used for library books. Anything that's not used should be returned to you. You want to make sure that when you're doing these things that you have no future responsibility for the PTA. Again, if you decided that we wanted to have, a welcome to X school doormat purchased for the school, that's a great thing that the PTA wants to gift to the school through the school district. You want to make sure that the school district accepts the gift and does the purchasing so that in the future, the PTA doesn't have any responsibility. It's the school district that's going to vacuum it and maintain it. And if anything happens related to that mat, it is the responsibility and liability of the school district. But there's no reason that you can't and shouldn't have a full accounting of this fund spent. As I said, if it's library books and there's $5 left from the library books money, that should come back to the PTA and that should be shown to your members. We gifted $1,000 to the school district for school books. They spent $995. They gave us back the $5, and we have everything accounted for. We really aren't in the business of providing direct financial assistance to schools. So again, it's we really aren't going to give open-ended things like, as we want to just be able to say, okay, principal, we'd like to give you $1,000 slush fund for your use throughout the year. Here it is, use it any way you want. That's not acceptable. Again, everything should go through the budget. And if we do have a budget line for, say, principal support, again, when money is expended from that, it should be approved by your members. So again, if the principal says, yes, I want to institute a program where it's, every Monday is lunch with the principal day, and I'd like to have some funds to help pay for, the beverages or that type of thing. As long as your members approve that, then that's okay for you to honor his expenses for that, or her expenses. Even giving the money to the school district, just as a reminder, we do have a liability part of our insurance policy. It has been raised to $2 million this year. Again, but we like to keep our cost of our insurance program as low as possible. And one of the reasons we can do that is by limiting the amounts of claims, as the same thing that would happen with your homeowner or car insurance. So we want to limit our liability as much as possible. So again, the gifting program is the way to go. Donations to the school district. There is a form that will help you do that in the resource guide. But again, please keep in mind when you're making the decision to do this, that even though we feel that we're going to give it over to the school district and they will assume liability, it doesn't always mean that it can't come back to PTA. You will be protected through your liability policy with legal expenses if needed. But again, it's still a little bit, it would be very hard as an officer to have to, go through the process of being sued for some sort of liability. So again, please keep that in mind when you're doing things, because you're not going to be the officer forever. So again, if you choose to do something that's going to live at the school for 10 years, you really need to think ahead about the other officers that are going to follow behind you as being, responsible for these things that you put in place. And finally, sometimes you're approached by other groups who want to work together with you. And this happens a lot with booster clubs at the high school level. Let's pair together and, have a great homecoming, back to school barbecue, or those types of things. It's perfectly acceptable to work with other groups. But the most important thing with that is to set up the guidelines ahead of time so everybody knows what everybody's responsible for. Again, decide ahead of time who's doing what, who's spending what, who's going to get the proceeds, if any, and make sure that's all in writing, and that each group has an accounting of the funds at the end, especially for the PTA side of it, because we want to be able to share that with our members. Okay, so this is my final slide. And this is just a list of some of the things that we have available. I've referred to the resource guide several times. It's on the New York State PTA website. There's actually two sections for treasurers. There's both the finance section and the insurance section from the insurance company, all about our AIM insurance and what it covers and what we need to do to make sure that we stay compliant with our insurance policy. The New York State PTA website also has treasurer information on it, also under the leaders tab, and you can just follow that path. I mentioned through the back to school kit, you can go directly to the National PTA website for their e-learning library to take any kind of classes you want, again, at your own time. That's the joy of virtual training. The back to school kit. Everybody has a region director and a region treasurer who is more than willing to support or answer any of your questions. If you don't know who that person is, you can feel free to put that in the chat box now. You'll see next is my email. You are welcome to email me anytime. I will respond to you, and then you will also have my phone number that you could call or text me anytime with any of your questions or concerns about what's happening with your budget or any of your other treasurer responsibilities. And then finally, especially when anything related to your insurance and the 990, we also have the support of our membership and insurance manager, Dana Welch, who works at the New York State PTA office, and you're always welcome to contact her for support. Her and I work together, so if a question comes in that's more for me than her, we'll share that back and forth. So that I am going to say is the last slide of our presentation. So I'm going to stop the sharing, and Rob's going to help me answer some questions, I think, is what we're going to do for the remaining 7 minutes.
That's right, Patty. So I think the first question started around 127 from Kim about the executive board.
Sure.
Can we just get that? Can you have the executive board confirm these, or should they not be the executive board and have outside people?
Are we talking about the audit?
No, this was talking about the reconciliation.
The reconciliation can be done by members on your board, most certainly. Again, as long as they're not signers, authorized signatures on the account, or related to one of the authorized signatures. So yes, and you know, it's a good idea to kind of involve. You can either have the same people every time because they know what's happening, or you can involve different people, because I think as a treasurer, it's important for everybody to see the work that you do. I am in a giant learning curve as the treasurer for New York State PTA. It's obviously a lot more than, you know, working in a unit, and I'm learning a lot. And yeah, it's good to share some of the work. I highly recommend it. Anybody want to reconcile the New York State books with me?
Okay. The next one is from Alicia about forms. Are the forms available as templates?
So the forms that I showed you from the resource guide at this moment in time are not, but it is one of my goals for the upcoming year as treasurer. I just finished my, I'll finish my first year as treasurer in November. So I'm moving forward with, now that I've learned all like the internal workings, I am working, moving forward, trying to get those released so that they are templates on our website. But the templates do exist in a slightly different form on the national site in that local leader kit, and I recommend those for sure.
Thank you. The next one is from Megan. They have somebody who has not cashed their check in over 180 days.
So that obviously is a stale check at this point, so it will more than likely not pass through the bank. So you can certainly reach out to the person and let them know that whatever your procedure is, and everybody should have procedures. So, and if you don't, this is a great time to write up a procedure to match your bylaws. So again, you could have a procedure that says checks not cashed within the 6-month time frame. Either we will consider them donations to the PTA, or you will write that, you know, we will make 2 attempts or 3 attempts to contact the person we gave the check to ask them, you know, did they want a replacement, et cetera, et cetera. And go from there. So if they don't respond after 2 or 3 times, whatever you set up in your procedure, you can cancel that check and consider it a donation to the PTA.
Thank you. The next one from Luz about, can a principal request PTA to use funds to replace signage as a donation? Or PTA fund the scholarships? And principals request also PTA use funds to update recipients annually.
So the principal can ask for anything they want. They're the principal. We want to maintain a good relationship with the principal. The thing is, we don't have to say yes all the time to the principal. So again, the number one thing is when the principal puts in the request, and I'm assuming he's or she is doing that to the president/executive committee. The number one thing is the executive committee should first discuss it, looking at our mission, and looking at your commitment to your school community and your PTA members. So for instance, if the principal is asking for something that's $10,000 and your annual income is usually $12,000, you really need to think about how you would honor that request anyway. So again, I think a lot of it is a discussion on behalf of your membership through the executive committee, exactly what you want to be able to report or support. So again, it would have to be part of your budget if it isn't already. But again, PTA, we are independent from the school, but at the same time, we do maintain and want to maintain excellent relationships with the school. So a good conversation with the principal as to why they might want this. And again, we want to make sure that if the school district and through the taxpayer supported budget should be providing those things to your school, then that's really the best place. So the one thing we can do, so if we feel that every school needs a sign or a playground or whatever, we should be, as PTA members, going to the board meeting and advocating and saying, this is something that's, you know, the community wants. We are the taxpayers. We want to, you know, we feel that this is something that the school district should provide the funds for.
Okay, the next one is a little about grants. It's from Irene and also from Julie. Can you have a line item for grants, and also what about teacher grants? For example, PTA has X amount of dollars available for teacher grants. Can the PE teacher submit applications for the new equipment?
Sure. So grants are great both ways. You are welcome to apply for grants. You have the 501c3 status, which is required for a lot of grants, so you already have that. And if you don't have your letter of determination that proves that, you can always contact the New York State office for that, a copy of that. So you can apply for grants, and I hope everybody is watching the National PTA because they have been giving out a large amount of grants and some in small amounts of money, some in larger amounts of money, but the application process to get those grants is very manageable. On the flip side of it, if you want to be a grant giver, that is certainly acceptable too, as long as, again, your membership approves it. And so you want to have a process in place that's fair and equitable, and a committee that approves the grants or reviews the grants and submits who they feel should get it to whoever the final decision maker is going to be. But as long as you have procedures and a process in place, a grant program like teacher grants is actually a great way for you to support the school community, and then to have be able to say back to your members that you offered these grants and, you know, teachers came forward and this is how they chose to use the money. And we do offer teacher grants actually through National PTA, and we have been doing that for the last couple of years. So again, something else to look for you to apply on behalf of your teachers or have your teachers apply.
Okay, the next one real quick is about carrying over. How much can a PTA carry over? Is there a recommended amount?
Sure, and I will cover that also in treasurer topics if you're going to be in the third session. Basically, there is no guideline from the IRS or National or New York State PTA about how much money you should carry over. We recommend it be no more than half of your yearly expenses, and at the highest, 100% of your. So again, we don't want to be in the position where we are stockpiling funds unless there's a specific purpose for that. But we really are a year-to-year association. We have our members every year, and then we get new members, some returning, some new members. So we really want to keep everything on a year-to-year. That being said, obviously we have money that gets carried over. The thing is, you should account for that in your new budget. So your budget committee should know we're going to be approximately ending the year with so much. So we want you to include that in your budget. So that's, instead of, if you're going to carry over $10,000, that's $10,000 less they have to identify how they're going to get to cover your expenses through maybe fundraising. So again, we want to minimize our fundraising as much as we can. We are an advocacy organization. We agree that we have to fundraise to support that work, but we don't want to be seen as a fundraising machine, for lack of better words. So I feel like our time is come to the end, and we have a great second workshop for the treasurers or anybody else who's interested on how you'd use Member Hub to work on your treasury things. So I will be getting a copy of the chat, and I will try to be responding if I can to people. So quickly if you want an email response, quickly throw your email into the chat. I might be able to get it, but anyway, throw your email into the chat if you want a response to a specific question, or just email me now. I'll be answering emails probably for the next couple weeks. So I want to thank everybody for being with us. This is the first time, as you know, we've done this, and we appreciate your patience as we got started. And my email address really quickly is treasurer@nyspta.org. I will put it in the chat box really quickly, and then I am going to sign off so Sonia and myself can meet you in the next workshop. And stay until the end because we have prizes. Okay, and then just like that, Sonia, I pass it to you, right? Do I have to stop sharing my screen?
Yes.
Okay, I'm stopping. No, share screen, share screen.
I don't think it was shared.
I think Rob turned it off for me.
I will make her a host. No, you can stop sharing the screen.
Okay, am I still sharing it?
No, you're good.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Treasurer.
Definitely.
I'm just doing a copy of the chat real quick before I turn it over. So you give me a few minutes.
Okay.
I'm gonna send this over.
Okay, so we're 2:05, right, Sonia?
Yeah.
Okay, so now should I sign on to the thing or should I wait?